The state of Florida has been the butt of a lot of jokes over many years, so much so that the stereotype of the Florida man was born. A game even spawned where you can Google your birthday or any random date and the words Florida man or Florida woman and see the ridiculous result. For instance, September 5th, 2019, Florida man protects car from Hurricane Dorian by parking it in his kitchen. Or June 8th, 2017, Florida man desperate for a ride to Hooters calls 911. These memeable headlines were made possible due to Florida's Sunshine Law, which makes it easier for journalists and the public to access and share all of the weird stories that come out of the Sunshine State. However, there is one man who keeps using his pudding fingers to make Florida's reputation even worse, and that is Governor Ron DeSantis. How could it get any worse? A question I ask myself every single day. Well, get out your banned books and raise your pride flags high as we discuss the most Florida man that ever did Florida man. Tonight on I Do Not Trust This Person, the weird lives of Ron and Casey DeSantis. Welcome back to I Do Not Trust This Person, the weird lives of Ron and Casey DeSantis. This week, we are going to be discussing why Ron is kind of a jerk. I'm just going to say it. I'm taking that bold stance. He's kind of a jerk. What do you think, Alanah? Jerk? No jerk?
Not kind of. He's full on.
Full on a jerk? Yeah. So, Ron, a jerk. I think we can all agree on that. Unless you're a fan of Ron and listening to this, then you're not going to like this show. No. I promise. But listen anyways and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on America the Podcast Presents on YouTube. And
he's 100% a jerk. And he is an insecure wimp.
He is an insecure wimp, and as you're going to find out today. So before we get into it, Alanah, are you pro-torture or not?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question. I'm going to go not.
Not. Okay. Should have been easier. Might consider different spouse and host. All right. Cool. So, yeah, we're going to get to why I asked that question a little later.
I'll tell you how anti-torture I am.
How anti-torture?
When I was in college,
you were tortured?
I think it was in college. I forget now. I think it was, pretty sure it was in college. I wrote a paper on why George Bush
is a war criminal,
and should be held at the international court.
Yeah, I think
on war crimes.
Country of Malaysia or someone, sanctioned him, and he's wanted for war crimes there. I have that
paper printed. All those I
would love to read that
buckets under the bed that are just filled to the brim with random
is it in
papers. No, without a doubt, because my mom gave me a bunch of random. You know how your mom likes to keep random things? My mom has kept
everything.
Papers I've written and report cards that I've gotten over the years.
God, why report cards?
And I have so many things.
Your work may need to, read your report cards at some point. You never know.
But for sure, that paper is somewhere in there. So yes, I have a long record of being anti-torture.
Anti-torture. So that's good. I'm glad to know that you are anti-torture. Well, I too and also am anti-torture of all kinds. Because
except for if it's in the show The Good Place, then I'm in favor of it because
for them being tortured there.
It's a good show.
But
I do take pleasure in the show.
That's true. It's mostly just a plug for The Good Place because The Good Place definitely needs our plug. Emmy nominated The Good Place. I think Emmy nominated should have been if it wasn't. So why Ron is such a jerk? So one of our first clips here is Ron getting a little testy, and this clip, we'll play the audio, but I encourage you to go watch it as well because it's watching him react to the presence of these children is just so funny, of him yelling at some kids during COVID, and I believe this is 2021, if I'm not mistaken, for wearing masks at this, I believe it's a sports event for young athletes, and he's speaking at it.
I think, is it not a bill signing?
No, this is not a bill signing. He's just at a school or school event, and he does this.
You do not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything, and we got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous.
So yeah, like, I mean,
Vanity Fair calls him a smug asshole.
Smug asshole. Yeah, I know. That was my favorite article that I read about this. It's just like, why? I mean, it was. He was. I don't understand. I know why, because he was very anti-mask, even though he was actually very pro-vaccine, and he was pro-mask at the beginning until Trump said not to be masked. That's a whole another thing of him licking the boot.
It was 2022, I think.
I should say does not have lifts in it.
Oh.
Trump's doesn't. He's licking Trump's
Trump
boot.
is truly tall.
Trump is actually a tall person.
By the way, after we finished that last episode,
Sure.
I went down a rabbit hole of looking at Ron DeSantis photos, Casey DeSantis photos, comparing his heights to other people.
Sure.
And I am officially going to say that he's between 5'8" and 5'9". I agree with that.
And like he's built like a toddler. Like you ever watch if any parents out there that have a toddler, they're little chunky arms and legs, and I'm not calling Ron fat. It's just he's
like the waddle. They kind of do like a waddle.
He with his hands. No one can see what I'm doing right now. The hands out to his side almost. It's just.
And then his face. He's always just like
scrunched. He doesn't know how to use it.
Why aren't things going my way? This isn't unfair.
Yeah,
he's literally like a toddler in that way too.
It reminds me of the alien from the beginning of Men in Black, the sugar and water guy. So, God, I love that movie. But so yelling at the kids though, like being anti-mask.
He's such an asshole.
Why?
Okay, so we played the clip again last episode. We played the clip of him responding to that Japanese.
The
and it's just
Japanese
that tonality.
reporter.
Like he's so.
No, we're not running for
rude.
president or whatever
He's so
said.
rude.
Yeah,
and short-tempered and. And he calls it COVID theater.
COVID theater.
Dude.
That's what, like, oh my goodness. Like, it's not, it was in like knee deep in COVID too. Like 2021, it was like the Omicron Persei 8 variant or whatever is going on. And these kids, and the kids too, you see that in their faces where they take their masks off. They're like, I don't view that as like
uncomfortable
they
watching
feel
that
uncomfortable
video because you see their faces and they're kind of looking around and they're really awkward and they're like, I guess
this grown-up man
and I'm on
the
camera.
Governor just told me to take off my mask.
The governor of the state in a position of power.
Yeah.
I'm on camera. This is really uncomfortable. And you can tell in their faces.
I don't know if
so
it's
awkward.
in the video that we have clipped or at least linked in the description, but it's the girl off to the side. I always just remember her face, just feeling like him saying that and her kind of laughing, going, oh yeah, he's kind of like messing with us. And then slightly realizing that, oh, he's being for real right now, that he wants these kids to take off their masks like at a public event. But that's just kind of the lighter things of why he's kind of a jerk, because, you know, he's a jerk. But he's also, I'll say this, because this ain't on YouTube. Well, it is on YouTube. And, you could subscribe there and listen there if you want. But he's kind of dumb a little bit. Like when it comes to a lot of subjects. Apparently,
I think that's why he gets so angry. Again, I think it all relates back to
real dumb guy energy, like Joe Rogan.
The insecurity.
Who's a self-admitted dumb guy too.
You said that Joe Rogan isn't dumb.
No, I have never. Not put words in my mouth. No, Joe Rogan. I just said Joe Rogan is a self-admitted dumb guy. No, Joe Rogan talks about being a dumb guy all the time. I have never said Joe Rogan isn't dumb. Absolutely not.
Well, I
said he doesn't have dumb guests on his show. Like he's had very intelligent people sometimes. Then he also has Jordan Peterson and on there and Alex Jones. So I don't know.
I'm gonna be real honest. I don't have a anything to say because I don't think I've ever seen Joe Rogan speak.
That's fine.
Cannot contribute to this. But what I do know is that I feel like, yes, Ron DeSantis is stupid and uses his like anger as a defense.
Yeah.
Because he's insecure.
Yeah, like he is a lawyer. Let's say that he is a JAG lawyer. He's, you do have to have smarts to get into Harvard or money. I don't know what his case was, but there's a difference between being dumb and then being unintelligent. And this was just kind of a dumb thing that he did.
These were high school students. Like these people were under 18. Like
not just that. Yeah, what I'm talking about here is about how kind of anti-black this man is and just how stupid he is when it comes to slavery. And this is not an unsurprising thing to any listener to this show because, Republicans probably are wrong about slavery a lot
they
of the time.
love to get real creative when
With
it comes
Nikki
to talking
Haley
about slavery.
saying the Civil War wasn't about slavery. Ron also kind of saying the same thing here. There's a quote in one of these articles, I believe it's in the Salon article we have linked, where it's from a quote from one of the students saying Ron was in the middle of class teaching this class on the Civil War, saying that every house in the South or every town in the South was burned, and this girl's like, I know for a fact my town was not burned. Like, you are getting things factually wrong here. But also,
why would anyone let him teach a class? That's a terrible idea, especially about a class on Black history. Terrible
idea.
Dude,
I don't know if it was a class on Black history, because he made sure to make sure there is no more Black history in Florida. But we'll get to that in a sec. But he's also been on record saying that slavery was a good thing because they learned valuable, transferable skills that will help them in their everyday life. Is that the exact quote? But that's just
these are literally like guidelines that he's putting in place.
Oh yeah, and these are
state
with I should say, America the Conversation has an episode on PragerU that you should watch, or watch any explainer from Second Thought or anybody else on PragerU. He's instituting their curriculum. That
enslaved Black people developed skills that could be applied for their personal benefit.
Yes, exactly. And this is all propaganda, right-wing propaganda for PragerU, for teachers just to play a video in the class. It's on YouTube. They have cartoons for kids where two Latino kids go back in time and visit Frederick Douglass. They go back and visit Frederick Douglass, who also says slavery wasn't bad. And I believe he's the one that says that Black folks learned slaves, anybody who was enslaved, Black folks especially, learned transferable skills.
What I love the most about this is, and we talked about, in Germany, they purposely teach World War II and what happened during World War II in all of its horrors and details because they specifically don't want people to forget about what happened and they want people to learn, versus what is happening in Florida and a lot of other places where they say that, teaching the truth makes people feel uncomfortable. Makes white people feel guilty. Yeah. So they want to ban all of that to prevent people from feeling uncomfortable and parents feeling uncomfortable because their kids come home and ask questions. Yeah.
Banning critical race theory. And his biggest thing was trying to ban critical race theory in schools, which is not taught in children's schools, in elementary schools.
Well, it's the same thing with the Don't Say Gay. It's for the same reason. It's like, I don't want my child coming home and asking me about this, so please don't mention it ever. Okay, well, with that logic, then maybe we shouldn't teach about anything ever in school, period. Because guess what? Kids are going to ask questions about
history. Was uncomfortable.
You're
Christians led the Crusades and slaughtered so many Muslims that the streets literally flooded with blood. Like, they do teach that, but that was 1,000 years ago. But they don't want to teach you any history that makes you feel guilty, and they definitely don't want you talking about your wife or husband if you're a gay person, or your gay brother or any sort of gay person in the school.
They could teach it. The history piece about, this, we're just talking, shouting at each other angrily, but the slavery piece
Ron
they
DeSantis,
could teach.
He's triggering.
Yes, because they could teach it in the way that Germany has taken on the teaching about what happened with Hitler and the Jewish population and the Holocaust. Like, teach it so that people learn from it. Why did it happen? How did it happen? And let's make sure that things like that don't happen again, and we have an open dialogue. Yeah, like we're regressing.
Oh yeah,
it's
certain
insane.
areas are, it's crazy, and I fully blame education or lack of education and people just finding their way into power to want us to regress in general.
It's sad because it's now going to be this self-fulfilling thing where. Because they're passing all of this, a lot of people don't want to be teachers anymore.
Yeah, teachers left Florida.
Teachers are leaving, and guess who's coming in to replace those teachers? Teachers who are okay with the policies. So it's just, we're creating this really dangerous thing where, because, teachers spend a significant amount of time with our kids. So they are influencing our children. And for the whole state of Florida, you're going to have an entire generation or multiple generations of kids growing up with, teachers who are instilling this information, and it's really scary.
And I mean, not to mention banning books. I mean, that they're banning, they're banning math books because they claim they had critical race theory in them or some dumb shit like that.
Yeah, the list of books that they've like attempted to remove from libraries, it's crazy.
Can you fact check this one for me real quick? There was I believe it was Florida, but all librarians were recently let go. That could have been Houston too. We're both not great over here, Texas and Florida. We're kind of the same, but all librarians were just let go at one of these towns, if not across the state. I can see Florida doing that, but if it's true.
Well, a bunch of librarians have been fired across the country. There have been stories of librarians fired for refusing to remove banned books.
Right. Okay.
But Spring Branch ISD.
Okay. This is Houston.
In the Houston area.
The Houston one, then, not Florida.
So this is recent. This is just a couple of days ago. Yeah. They are due to budget cuts. Let me see if this is...
We're recording this March 10th, I believe, is the date today. So March 9th.
Well, and this is interesting because it's related to what we're talking about. And I'm just very quickly scanning this article from the San Antonio Express News. But basically, there Spring Branch ISD, also Keller ISD.
Oh, that's where I'm from.
Making cuts after book banning feuds put librarians at the center of this debate and making, having
issues with parents threatening their lives, stalking them, angry.
So Keller ISD reduced librarians by 50%.
Jeez.
Which is crazy because
that's so crazy.
Reading is one of the things. As a child, reading is one of the most important things for your development of language, writing, spelling, understanding of the world, imagination, creativity. Like, there are so many skills that you get from reading. Mm-hmm. This is insane.
Yeah.
Just one more thing on this, because Spring Branch ISD has 35,000 students. And yes, you're correct. They eliminated. So whereas Keller cut their librarians by 50%, Spring Branch eliminated all librarians. And they said it was because of budget constraints.
How do you, who works at the library then?
I mean, do these places even have libraries with all of the books that they've
banned? Yeah, banned?
I know. Honestly, like, I'm telling you, like, the list of books that have been
insane.
Banned is crazy.
So there's one area where they banned, it was an algorithm or some sort of a spreadsheet algorithm they were using to search books or search titles, ended up banning the Bible, and the Bible got added to the list. And so people freaked out. It was real dumb. But the Bible, pretty full of sex and violence, just saying. But one other, obviously the thing we were getting at, the Don't Say Gay bill and everything, that's really, like, his racism is expected because, frankly, Republicans. But going after the gay folks too and trans folks and just making the spectacle, like creating these, Ron DeSantis, I think, is the person who I can point to as the person who kept using the word woke as a negative. Mm-hmm. That term was, popular on Twitter or whatever for a while. And, black folks have been using it for a long time as well. But he started using it, I'm anti-woke, or and blah, blah, blah. And started this
badge
movement.
Of pride or something.
Yeah. There was not necessarily a big movement to try and undo any of what had already just been established, a few years earlier by the Supreme Court with gay marriage and, trans rights also being more established.
Well, I'm sure there was in a small amount, but it seems like it's gotten more.
It's because he used it. And this is really kind of what I'm getting at here is he used this anti-woke, these fake culture wars as a way of just his campaign bullshit. Just ways of getting people on board, of riling up a crowd. There's always one guy with a pitchfork, ready to start screaming. And that was kind of Ron DeSantis with, again, the anti-critical race theory stuff and
also
the anti-gay
transition care.
Banning transition
that's
care,
also a thing,
which I think he banned it for adults too. I don't
minors.
It's definitely for minors.
Well, the article I'm looking at is from NBC from a year ago because he signed 4 bills expanding "Don't Say Gay" to down to 8th graders. Uh-huh. Banning transition-related care for minors. barring trans people from using the public facilities that align with their gender identity, and then restricting the whole drag thing, which is
like drag story time.
Has to be one of the most ridiculous things. I know. Like this obsession
with drag. It's because they view it as the same thing as being trans. They view and they think that it's trying to indoctrinate children. When I don't remember the exact number, we mentioned it on ATC, but there have been last year in 2023 no child assaults by an adult in a sexual manner that were a drag queen of any kind. There were, however, tons of different like religious leaders and Christians and Republicans and conservatives and things like that. So maybe let that sink in next time you try and hate on drag story time when drag queens try and come and just read a book to kids.
So it's just it's just crazy. It's gross. They completely prohibited sexual orientation or gender identity instruction in pre-K through 8th grade, and then restricting reproductive health in 6th through 12th grade, which
through 6th through 12th grade. Good grief!
Honest right now, it's March 2024.
Yeah.
Florida is in the middle of a measles outbreak.
Yeah.
They're probably about to have if they don't already, it's probably getting worse, a teen pregnancy issue.
Yeah.
All because
of the abortion ban. Yeah.
Like all of this is happening and they don't see that it's all related. It's like
the Surgeon General just said something about the measles. He rejected
he said that people should, it's optional. He said that mothers should, parents should decide whether or not they want to vaccinate their kids,
babies, because measles very, very deadly.
It's like
famously deadly.
We were talking about. I was listening to a report on NPR or a KUT here in Austin about vaccinating your dogs. There was that woman. Unfortunately, she's based in Austin. I can't remember. She works for some.
Don't dox her, but
she was in the article. She was in the not the article, but the
interview.
What do you call yes?
The interview,
the interview,
similar to what we're doing.
The news piece on the radio. She identified herself and her business.
Oh, sure.
But she was talking about how she doesn't believe in vaccinating her dogs against rabies because there isn't a widespread cases, and there's not a widespread need
because we keep vaccinating our dogs.
It's like she scream it from the rooftops, and that's exactly the situation with the measles, where it's the only reason we got rid of polio, measles, mumps, like all of these different diseases, is because we vaccinated against them.
Tuberculosis.
It is truly maddening. So now Florida's in the middle of a measles outbreak, and they're probably going to be, they were one of the worst during COVID in terms of deaths. Yeah. Like, and they don't, and that's so crazy. The insanity is they don't, I don't know. Are they just like stupid? Do they choose not to look at
not all of Florida?
No. I'm saying like the Surgeon General is a doctor. General,
right. Yes. Yeah.
He is seeing a rise in measles cases.
Yeah.
And he's telling people that vaccination is optional, and the measles cases continue to rise. Like, are we not putting two and two together here with the math?
I don't know how he keeps his doctor's license after that, but I guarantee he's being ordered by Ron. It's an election year. They're trying to be anti-Biden, blah, blah, blah. It's all politics. They play with people's lives. Like, that's all politics is, just games with people's lives. And that's what Ron is doing by trying to get people not to get vaccinated from measles. Like, what the hell? God grief.
Here's a quote from Ron DeSantis that's so great. When he signed the bill about, don't say gay and all of that, he says that the bill will make sure that Florida students and teachers will never be forced to declare pronouns in school or be forced to use pronouns not based on biological sex. And he says, we never did this. We never did this through all of human history until 2 weeks ago? Now, this is something. They're having third graders declare pronouns. We're not doing the pronoun Olympics in Florida. It's not happening here. So he thinks that people only had alternative pronouns 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah. No, the trans people, brand new thing, by the way. Don't know if any of you knew that. New concept, total sarcasm. So last thing as to why he's not more of a jerk, but this is more of why he's a monster, I would say.
I mean, based on everything we've talked about today, I would
say he's a monster. But so there is through the Washington Post, all these things are linked in the description. There is a podcast episode called "What Ron DeSantis Did at Guantánamo Bay."
Yes.
So Ron
circling back to your initial question of
torture,
episode,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Ron wanted to be a JAG lawyer. He went to Harvard, graduated Harvard Law, became a JAG lawyer, which is a Navy lawyer. I don't remember what JAG stands for. I know it's an old people show that my grandma just loves. I think it's still on too, and it's as old as like, what do you call it? Law and Order SVU and stuff like that. But just a law show about the military. But it is also a real life thing where you are a Navy lawyer, you advocate for I think just the Navy or even prisoners of war as well, I believe. Not real fluent on it. But he got assigned to Guantánamo Bay. And so he was given a lot of responsibility by a General McCarthy down there. And a lot of prisoners remember interacting with Ron DeSantis specifically. Mm-hmm. Now, there is, if people out there will say, well, the New York Times didn't find any evidence of it. Well, the Washington Post, I would say, based off the interviews from this man and the clip I'm going to play in this section, I'd say it chalks it up to this is the evidence as far as I'm concerned, but it's still technically, no, whether he not did anything himself, no. I don't think he did. But what we're talking about here is a lot of these prisoners, again, remembered him when he became governor. If there's one thing I can say with absolute certainty is that if someone tortured me, I'd never fucking forget their face. Mm. I would remember, and even I would remember every face in the room, even which was potentially the case. Well, not potentially, was the case here. So Ron would meet with some of these prisoners, saying that he would bring up their concerns with them, with the higher ups. A lot of prisoners went on hunger strikes and everything, which I'll get to in a sec, and would say they were going to bring things up to the higher ups, and then he never did. So one of the accusations is that Ron, from these folks, I'm not going to play their audio because I couldn't
This is
get
a
my hands on
Washington
it.
Post article.
This is a Washington Post article. There's a podcast episode listed, and that's the one I mentioned that goes into this specific thing a bit more in depth than I'm going to. But they interviewed people who have been since released, and they, again, very much remembered being force-fed during a hunger strike by soldiers there. With Ron in the background, because one of the times, one of these men say that the only thing I could do in protest of being force-fed was to spit the food out back. And I very vividly remember, and I'm paraphrasing the man's words here, I vividly remember a piece of it landing on Ron DeSantis. Now, that was to at least everything I found, at least within that New York Times article, they said that was alleged. Well, then there is this audio of Ron DeSantis back when he was running for governor, admitting to the fact that he advised them to force feed people and that it was legal to do so. Here it is.
What was your experience there, and what exactly did you do while you were there?
Well, also, I'm a blue-collar kid, which a lot of people running for this office are millionaires, have inherited an awful lot of money. I didn't get squat. I started off making $6 an hour. I was able, through baseball, to play at Yale and go to Harvard Law School. Then I decided to commission as a JAG officer in the U.S. Navy. I volunteered to serve in Gitmo. I was sent down there on temporary assignments, working for the Joint Task Force Guantánamo, which was in charge of dealing with these terrorists that were there.
So were you interviewing terrorists? Were you a legal advisor?
I was a legal advisor.
For those that were doing...
The things that would happen is, the thing you notice the day you get down there is, for these detainees, the jihad was still ongoing. Right. And they would wage jihad any way they can. Now, they're in a facility, so it's limited, but some of the things they would do hunger strikes. And you actually had 3 detainees that committed suicide with hunger strikes. So everything at that time was legal in nature one way or another. So the commander wants to know, well, how do I combat this? So one of the jobs of the legal advisor would be like, hey, you actually can force feed. Here's what you can do. Here's kind of the rules of that. You also had a lot of detainees claiming abuse, because this was in in the wake of Abu Ghraib, and that was used offensively against our guards. So our guards would have feces thrown at them, all this other stuff, and yet they would be charged with detainee abuse. So we had to evaluate all that. So what I learned from that and I took to Iraq when I was working with SEAL Team 1 is they are using things like detainee abuse offensively against us. It was a tactic, technique, and procedure.
So yeah, he said this is how you do it. Like this is how you force feed people legally, like which is considered torture. Especially when a person's on a hunger strike. But even then, forcing anybody to do anything is a form of assault and torture. And a lot of these people, you know, some of you out there may be saying, well, these were terrorists from 9/11. The majority, well, maybe not the majority, but a lot of these people were found to not have been terrorists at all, that they were nothing more than folks who kind of fit a profile that were picked up by a warlord in Iraq or Afghanistan, handed over to the military and sent off. And then those people either ended up going home. Some of them, I believe a few joined up with Al-Qaeda as a result of it, or a terrorist group because they were fucking pissed off. Like, you know what? Screw these people. I'm just going to go rejoin. And I don't know if that's true or not. I'm saying, but I do believe that I have heard that before. That could have just been right-wing propaganda that I'm misquoting. So forgive me if that's not true.
And maybe it's not true for these specific people.
Sure.
However, there are studies that show that torture is not effective.
No.
And
Dick Cheney swears it is.
And that it does cause people to become more extreme. Because guess what? You are, you know, the other side, whatever side it is that you're trying to torture, right? They have already filled these people's heads full of their own propaganda about the United States and Americans and what they're capable of and how evil they are, right?
Yeah.
So you are proving all of that correct and just further making them go down a more extreme hatred for
and think of
country.
the families of the people that are being tortured at Guantánamo Bay. And again, not saying that any of them joined a terrorist group, that would piss me off enough to go, you know what? Fuck America. Like you create these things by torture, like by doing the one thing. You just don't be a human.
And
don't torture people.
This is proven. Like there are study after study has shown that torture is not effective.
Yeah.
That the information that you get out of torture is unreliable. It's usually not actually true because people will, guess what? They'll say anything to stop being tortured.
Yeah.
And that it causes people to be, to shut down emotionally and become more extreme. Like, and that makes complete sense when you think about it logically. So yeah, it's so gross.
Yeah.
Everything, all of this with
all
him.
of this has been gross.
Everything at Guantanamo.
Which is, with him in general, like the last thing that he did was there was a story about, and they mentioned this in the Washington Post as well, like 3 guys were found simultaneously had killed themselves and hung themselves, and specifically that. And Ron had told the news, and this is just where it gets murky, where maybe he had heard from something else, said that it was just based off of a hunger strike, like insinuating that they had starved to death or something like that.
But that's the
which
thing,
is not
those
the
places,
case. And that they were also about to be released, but they had also not been told that they were going to be released. So like
the information coming out of Guantanamo has always been so hush hush and so hard to really know what's going on. It's so crazy.
The one thing we do know is that Ron DeSantis, by his own admission, was not only there but admitted to saying that you can hunger strike, you can force feed people during hunger strikes, and he barely mentions it in his book. Like, so
why would he?
Well, I know, but
he's only going to mention the medals and the shiny good stuff about himself.
But for somebody who really wanted to, he wanted to interrogate terrorists. That's why he wanted to do this. He wanted to, serve his country after 9/11, like blah blah blah. Like, people do that, and you torture people, man. And it's all technically alleged because he didn't physically ever do that, but he definitely advised on it. So. Yeah. I don't know what you call that, like an advisor to a torturer.
Well, to me,
what is that at that point?
It's interesting. I not that telling people to do it and not doing it yourself, there's something interesting there. I don't know if it's worse or not, but there's almost,
it's not his job kind of a thing.
Well, it's one of those things where, like, if you are being forced to do something bad and you are in a weaker position where someone in a position of power is telling you to do something, that is more understandable, right? Like, of course, you could protest. You could say, no, I won't do that. No, I refuse. But then you're going to like probably lose your job or whatever. There are consequences, and it can be, it can be like 1% more understandable versus him who is in the position of power telling people to do that.
Yeah.
So it's not even something that he necessarily has like a moral dilemma with or disagrees with, right? Because when you are the one who is just rolling out and enforcing what you're being told to do, a lot of times you might not have an option. This might be the only job you can have. You know, you might have a family that you're trying to, what is that face?
I'm just saying this isn't the case for Ron DeSantis.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing. Well, it's like, I'm thinking, and obviously torture is an extreme situation.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of someone I know who has a friend who works for the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And she's worked for the state of Texas for decades.
Sure.
And so she is literally like almost to retirement. And, you know, retirement from a government job is great.
Yeah.
But she's struggling under Abbott to continue to work in her position. And there's a strong part of her that morally wishes that she could just walk away.
Yeah.
But she's put so much time and effort into this career, and she has a family to take care of and bills to pay. And so she, you know,
it is what it is.
The thing that you have to do in this capitalist world where money speaks, right? We don't all have the luxury of just quitting our jobs.
CYA, man, cover your ass. Like,
but Ron DeSantis is not in a position like that.
No.
In this scenario, Ron DeSantis is the Abbott. Ron DeSantis is the one calling the shots.
Yeah.
He's not the one who is, you know, like struggling morally with this decision and just doing what someone else told him to do. No, he's the one who is pulling the trigger really.
Literally
with his words
now too, because I believe the governor of Florida has a lot of sway over Guantánamo Bay as well.
Oh,
as
yeah,
far as
I'm
the military
sure.
base. That's briefly heard that. Don't know too much about it. Again, we're not NPR. I'm not a journalist. I'm a comedian. So is she.
I just have a lot of opinions and a bachelor's degree in government.
Yeah, and the leftist comedy podcast network.
And a lot of opinions. Did I say that part already?
You did, yes. Because you have so many opinions. You
got
to reiterate it, man. So, yeah, Ron DeSantis is awful. I think it can be said as a fact almost. It's definitely an opinion, but it can an opinionative fact. There you go. Republicans love that.
They do. That's true. This is slippery slope.
Opinionative.
If we take everything that he has done, and the people that he has put at risk, the people who, and your whole family lives in Florida, so this is personal to us. Because you know they are at risk of measles. They are God knows what else, right? COVID is still a nightmare. Like they are, if there are any children in the family, they're all at risk of growing up to have terrible educations. They have something where it was like leftists shouldn't come, or liberals shouldn't come to Florida.
The Secretary of State, I believe, put out something which we were like, went there for Christmas. I'm like, are we gonna get arrested? Like that communists and socialists and leftists should remain out of Florida. I'm like, welp. I guess I'll leave my Antifa flag at home. So whatever.
No, it was Rick Scott. It was Rick Scott. Socialists and communists should avoid traveling to Florida. So literally, it's because
people said that gay people should avoid, like the ACLU said that gay folks and trans folks should,
which is fair.
Not
gay
go to Florida.
And trans folks are in danger. They can't use the bathroom that aligns with their
harassed,
gender. I mean, so absolutely,
that's Ron DeSantis's Florida, man.
Right, it is a place where it is bigoted and it is it is full of disease.
Yeah, it's full of disease. Like there's a lot of good people there, but Ron DeSantis has made a lot of bad people there too.
And of course, and that's the thing. This isn't against the people of Florida because, as we've discussed,
we often say screw Florida, screw Texas. We say both, and we live in Texas.
A lot of people do say that, right? Florida is the butt of a lot of jokes, because it's easy. But like, people don't have the luxury to just get up and move. It
No.
costs a lot of
No.
money. You've
A lot
got
of those
family.
folks are trapped there too. That was just like
right.
view themselves
They
as
have
trapped
to,
there.
they are born and raised, you know, it's expensive to move. Maybe they don't want to move.
Exactly.
Their families there, they've got businesses there. Like they still want to be a part of the state that they were raised in.
Yeah.
But it's just becoming worse and worse.
Because of one
It
short
sucks.
jerk. One 5'9", 10 in heels, or 6 foot in heels, jerk, and that's it. So now we've talked enough about Ron, though. So there's the phrase, I don't know where it's technically from. There's behind every man there is a more powerful woman. I believe is more or less the case. Casey DeSantis is definitely that, and is kind of the reason Ron is here. And you can blame her, much like you can.
I don't trust that face.
I don't trust that face.
tell
You
you
can
that
blame
much.
her for Ron, just like you can blame Nancy Reagan for Ronald Reagan. You can blame, that's pretty much it. Nancy Reagan was the worst. But yeah, so we're going to talk about Casey next week. What someone called the Walmart Karen, was it Walmart Karen? I forgot. Well, I'll tell you next week. I'll leave it on a cliffhanger. Will Tim remember? Who knows? It doesn't have his notes in front of him because that's a different episode. So thanks again for listening. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, especially on YouTube. It helps us a lot there. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. This is probably out by the time the Florida primary is out, so I would love to know how Florida treated Ron DeSantis. Hopefully not better than Nikki Haley, because she also did terrible in her state. So that's it. Goodbye and good night. You've been listening to I Do Not Trust This Person, Season 2, The Weird Lives of Ron and Casey DeSantis. The show is hosted by Alanah Matos and Tim Philippi. For a full list of news sources and music in this episode, please refer to the show notes. This episode was mixed and edited by Tim Philippi at Shway Media Studios in Austin, Texas. Executive producers for the show are Alanah Matos, Tim Philippi, and Andrew Turner. I Do Not Trust This Person was created by Tim Philippi and is a production of Shway Media and America the Podcast Presents. For more information, please visit shwaymedia.com and americathepodcastpresents.com. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved.
Been a production of Shway Media, all rights reserved. For more information, please visit shwaymedia.com.